previous week assignment? No. Okay. So we can move towards the lecture. It's the 4th Zoom lecture of the 2nd course, and it's a long one. It takes like a lot, and it has lots of facts and personalities. So if you feel tired, if you feel you have to go somewhere, switch off and go. You'll see the recorded version, I hope. So I just couldn't, I tried to make it as light, as short as possible, but yeah, there are so many facts and important things I couldn't just leave away. And instead of trying to put together some theology, I was thinking like I only could make this answer to difference in theology of to iconography in West and the East in like history, relationship of believers with iconography, how it evolved in the East and West. Okay, the changes, the main historical events which change something, or the documents, or specific opinions expressed. So that's it. Okay, let's move on, and I'm going to show, oh no, just a second. Oh yes, this is done. I've edited a couple of photographs just to make sure it's fine. 3, no, where is it? Come on. Так, 1 more second. 3, 2, 1, go. All right. So we start again, as always, we start from catacombs because that's where everything starts. And all our problems are there. Well, maybe not all, but some of them are. Because nobody knows what it is. But okay, let's start earlier. Let's start from the moment when we see the image and we understand it's quite common for any pagan artist as well to represent image of Hermes in the same way. So there were other iconography types which Christians used. For them, what was important? They just used iconography or type of a figure from ancient time, and they given them a new meaning, new content of the same subject. And the way of drawing or painting is very simplistic. We can even call it syllabus or conspect or compendium of holy scriptures. And the main idea is universal for most catacomb frescoes we see. It's idea of salvation. All images show biblical events, and they mostly demonstrate the act of some divine intervention on salvation. They show how humans can be saved, because probably that was the moment where they mostly expected for salvation to come very soon. And there are also many symbols we may encounter in catacombs, and in our time they are deciphered, and many of them are quite well known, and yet there are different opinions because different scholars have different points of view. Like Eastern scholars say that fishes, or the fish, is not just the name of Christ only, just Ichthys as the first letters. They think, Eastern guys, that it's provable by images of baskets of bread on the back of a fish. It's a prototype of Eucharist for the Eastern scholars. Protestant scholars doubt that because for them, probably the concept of the Eucharist is not such a meaningful event, and they don't see it so often in images. But there is at least one Catholic scholar, theologian, who thinks that even multiplication of breads is prototype for Eucharist. And I've just had Zoom session with Eastern Time, and I've had one person who said, yes, that's what I believe personally as well. So general attitude to early Christian art differs in different denominations. And Uspensky, speaking about Author's point, says that early Christian art is already liturgical. It already is dogmatic. So we can identify there everything which later will be available in iconography. Protestants say there's nothing sacramental because it is just regular Protestant point, not recognizing sacramentality of certain things. But we have to say thank you to Protestant scholars because they did doubt everything. They investigated and established a lot of real facts on the basis of their investigation. So real Christian history was discovered a lot because of the researches of Protestant scholars. And yet, nobody knows the purpose of early Christian paintings. For many generations, they were considered funeral, but that's because we only know paintings in subterranean catacombs, which were cemeteries. But literal sources say that Christians had their celebrations also on top of earth in private houses. And yet, we do not know what kind of images they had. No houses remained, almost nothing. So the earliest icons we know only date back to 4th or 6th century, the panel painting, and we see they were inheriting the style and approach of emperors' portraits, or just any kind of funeral portraits of the time. Eastern images of this time is about the same as Western, and there is no tradition behind. We are speaking about the early time, yet before 4th century. Every icon was created as a unique and new piece. They made every icon, every image from scratch. And the icons appeared or started, I don't know, diffusion, because some people wanted portraits of their friends respected as saints. And there were more and more people wishing to have these portraits, so artists continued to reproduce or copy or create multiple copies of them. So we can say that that's how everything started in iconography. We start from the cult of saints. But we can also mention the images of Christ, which become substitution of emperors' images, especially when emperors recognize Christianity and agree to be second after God, second after Christ. When all the Roman Empire becomes Christian, we often see images of Christ as ruler of all, or Christ in majesty. And this idea of emperor as earthly representative of God, or earthly image or symbol of heavenly king, it gets more and more popular. And we have lots of images of triumphant Christ in this period. Christianity has struggled, fought, and won the battle. I wrote that and I thought, wait, Philip, what does it mean, Christ like emperor? Can I ask you, what do you think was the personality of an emperor for someone who lived in the 2nd century in Roman Empire? Not necessarily Christian, anyone. Imagine yourself, you are a citizen of 2nd century after Christ, Roman Empire, somewhere. Who do you think emperor is, and what is relationship of emperor or influence of emperor into your personal life? Can I ask your opinion? You're all muted, I'm sorry, but I'd like to hear you, really wish to hear you.
I think that for people at that time, you were the ruler by divine right.
Okay.
So that means that you were the representative on earth of the law, that God has the law in heaven, you have the law on earth.
And
because of that, the divine right, you were given by God divine right to rule on earth.
Good, thank you very much. But more personal approach, yourself to the emperor. You vote for him? Maybe not, but what are your relationships with him? It's a hint.
To me, I think a lot of the people were scared of the emperor. because of
Okay.
the ultimate authority. And if you did something that displeased them, things did not always go well for you.
Okay. Yes. Any more, Allah?
Uh, this is not real, but how I see this, everybody has their own skills. Somebody is cooking, somebody is teaching, somebody is can defense, and somebody who can organize everything. So everybody has their own place in the world, and everybody should serve other people their own way, as well as emperor as leader serves other people, have an opportunity, have a leadership skills to organize other people to work together.
I doubt Roman emperors would share your point of view.
I know. That's why I told that, you know, this is how I see this, but yeah, in real life, it doesn't works like that.
Okay, Ina or Natalia, what would you say? You're a citizen of Roman Empire, 2nd century. What do you think regarding Emperor? What does he think about you?
Well, I
think
think,
uh,
go ahead.
Maybe Ina.
okay,
Well,
Ina, yeah.
probably I mentioned Ina first. Sorry, I should
Yeah.
have mentioned one at a time. Sorry,
Okay.
Ina, yes?
Well, I think that the emperor, it's like, in some way, it's like the concept of the ruler. It has two dimensions. One is the one that is the dictator. You could see it as a dictator, as you are mentioning, but also you can see it as the protector. And the protector, and also the one that would in some way control all the situations that could be adverse. So so you have that vision of Christ, or the images, you know, of Christ as the ruler of all and the one that is in control. So I think that that's the both ways. You can see it as the you know, the dictator, the tyrannic, you know, emperor, but also you can see it as the Lord of all, who would take care of you, and to take
Okay.
care of you know, providently take care of you. So that's, I think that that's a vision. Also was very ingrained in people. So
Wow, good. This
I
is
have that
part,
vision.
this is important part of the picture, but I'm trying to give a hint to hear some other point, but I may hear it yet, or maybe I'll share it, what I discovered for myself. Natalia, yes, sorry for interrupting and making confusion.
Yeah, I was thinking about that maybe Imperator was someone like God, but on earth. So someone
Yes,
with power,
yes,
something
yes.
like that.
And one of the main problems of old first Christians was they did not want to agree to venerate figures of emperor. They did not want to consider him God. That's right. So all the beautiful theories are fine, but first of all, we are talking about concept of divinity of the emperor. And not only him, but also any of his representations were considered special and requiring special respect. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you for pointing this out. I appreciate very much, because any image of the emperor had a legal meaning. We discussed it in the first course. When the emperor was inaugurated, his portraits were sent out to all the ends of his empire, and they were put in honorable places. And when some local official was doing his job, signing documents on behalf of the higher power, he had the portrait of emperor with candles lit behind him. Doesn't it remind you anything? So in the moment when you're making justice, you're doing something on behalf of the emperor, you have his presence or presence of his portrait behind you with candles, which mean now he is watching you, he is controlling you together with these particular officials. It's all legal in this way. Often these portraits were made on round panels and represented emperors with laurel wreath around the head, on a shield like warrior winners. And these round images of warriors were often put on long sticks to raise on top of the army, to show all the army. And army would carry a round portrait of emperor in their military trips. It could be on a stick, it could be high or low, and here, okay, it's a reconstruction, but yet we see it's a version of some portrait of some emperor. And when emperor becomes Christian, we see images of Christ being carried like that, carried as a signal, as a special image. And there are some sources that say that even before having image of crucified Christ on the cross, early Christians used to attach a round medallion of Christ on top of a cross. And there are some mosaics which testify this, and because, well, there are not many sources, but there are some of them which testify this idea, which was mostly the practice taken, or which the Roman state had by that moment. The state had this tradition of carrying image of emperor. And this is taken from a little container ampulla of Monza. We'll speak later about them, but it's an example of how the cross in the middle and on top there is image of Christ. So we can also say that round circles with images on early icons were also kind of relationship to these portraits. It's a legal practice. They tell us that it's not only of the main person standing or sitting in front of us on the image, but also presence of these little circles of saints painted in little circles who give legal power of documentary to this image. And of course, some images of Christ moved to the center of the cross, so they could have it in the middle. Main image of an icon has these additional round things, and they often represent saints. But saints, in the world of legal practice of Roman Empire, as representatives of the ruler. So here's the emperor, and here minor governors whose authority is confirmed in this image. That's very interesting. I never thought about that, but it has a lot to do with their practice, because there are so many hundreds of early icons in round form, so it's not occasional. We have set a number of icons of the Mother of God when she is holding a shield with the image of Christ. This doesn't show much. It's occasionally is not very good quality of photograph, but I can show you this one. Again, we don't see image of Christ, but we know it's been him. And these are her hands holding the shield. So she's carrying his image. She's demonstrating us him as the document. Look, that's him. That's the king. That's the emperor. That's the one who existed historically. Well, yet there were lots of people who did not agree, including some church fathers. We know words of Eusebius of Caesarea, who worked as court theologian for Constantine the Great, and his sister wrote him a letter and asked, could he commission for her a portrait of Christ? And she wants him to use his connections. So he is asking her which portrait she wants. Which of the two natures of Christ does she want to be represented? If she wants the divine, he says it's not possible to represent, it's divine. If she wants the human, it's not decent to represent it, since it's immortal and it's not showing the other side. So these were times when it was very tempting for believers to start using icons as idols again. Even though Gregory of Nyssa speaks about some images, they are very useful for churches because they tell stories silently and convincingly with visual means. Among the Western authors, we should mention Paulinus of Nola, middle of 4th century. He has built a great number of churches and commissioned paintings because he saw how effective are the images for churches. They attract people and teach certain concepts. There is one more document where some guy named Olympiodorus has built a church and wanted to paint it with scenes from hunting and fishing for people to enjoy the images. He asked for advice his spiritual father, and the answer was to better use biblical scenes as they will inspire people to seek salvation rather than simply enjoy the images. Well, that's how everything started. And now we come to the time of division between the East and the West, which we can say starts happening in around 5th or 6th century. Well, we move a little bit more to the East again, because Byzantine artists consider image more than that. Not only inspiring and telling stories, but also recreating Kingdom of God. Kingdom of God on earth, sacralizing this space. And the beholder is supposed to enter this little space of a church or stay in front of a little icon as being in presence of God. We see it in the way how Saint Sophia was built with this architecture of light and absence of weight and solemnity in every little detail. So first encaustic icons, which start having special qualities, also show this specific approach. It's kingdom on earth. Well, let's get back to the West. And the Western bishops and artists at that period didn't think much about theology. We know the letter of Pope Gregory Gregory the Great, it's end of 6th century, beginning of 7th, who sends a letter to Bishop of Marseille named Cyrenius. And he says probably the words which were later quoted thousands of times by many laymen or theologians. Everybody keeps quoting Gregory the Great. And he says this: don't destroy images. At least they can teach those who cannot read. Images remind about the history and may wake up your feelings, remind you how sinful you are, and inspire you to repent. So this is the main phrase repeated by so many people now. From this we can make statement, though, that images are okay, but there is no word about how sacred they are or not. So the value of image itself is not discussed. It's not discussed as an object of divine intervention, nothing like that. But around the 5th or 6th centuries, we can speak about growing number of images because they start to be connected to the relics. Relics producing miracles and images also producing miracles. So that is why they both are respected. And this is an ampulla of Monza, quite famous. Number of them is found in a little city known for Formula One. And they have a wonderful little museum. I've been there last year. They are little, teeny tiny, like 2 inches big, maybe 2.5. And they are little containers where pilgrims brought some precious oils from Jerusalem, 6th or 7th century. But we can see them. They represent like Mother of God with the Magi. But people appreciate images not because they're nice and show pictures, but because they are part of a relic. They hold the relic, they hold the precious stone, and that is why we understand they are good. They deserve some honor because they are part of a relic themselves. And there are many images even in 6th and 7th century because Gregory of Tours speaks about them a lot. And let's move a little bit further because on the West, we can only speak or mostly speak on icons which produce miracles. They were really respected, almost equally to miracles. And the ones which were produced, which are painted by artists, but with no miracles, not respected. They probably would consider it like replicas or some minor meaning, and yet not so high. So first meaning of an icon is to produce miracles at that time in the West. Byzantium, the same time, the same thing. 6th, 7th century, they didn't have yet any special theology about iconography, and mostly respected the ones which had relics. And already they thought of icons producing miracles because of having connection with their prototypes. So this is the difference. Main criteria is not the beauty, but how precisely, how exactly the author repeated the features, the outlook of the model. And I think the same approach we often have in our times. So the priest would ask you to repeat something exactly, expecting your new icon to possess the same miracle working qualities as the old one. Yes, and I'm probably moving again a little bit forward and thinking a little bit more about the period when we have these discussions about the role and nature of images in church. We can read hundreds of books and speak about iconoclasm or iconophiles for many hours, but as we wanted to discuss the current situation, I only want to share some conclusions. So first, this long period of iconoclast heresy, which is called, or history, had lots of different undercurrents or factors and components. We can't discuss everything. We can just say they almost did not touch the West. Western guys didn't worry much about that. On the East, the main theoretician and theologian was John of Damascus. And in short, he said that icon not only presents an appearance, but also some divine energy transcending through the image. And the very icon as an object, not only is a tool for connecting with God, but also a channel for His holy grace to descend onto earth. Church fathers also discussed what kind of honoring should be used towards icons, and the last words produced as an answer to the third wave of iconoclasm belong to Theodor Studit, and he speaks of an image of an icon as connecting to its prototype. He insisted we do not write image of Christ on an icon. We should write Christ on an icon. Well, there are many things to read about that. There are dissertations and theological books, but what I discovered as a curiosity for myself, that it always not was just a struggle or battle of theologians who would deny or agree with imagery, but very often these problems were rising when emperors decided it's not very good to have different images in different parts of empire. Let's forbid images for people not to be divided into different groups. Just no images makes everybody equal. Well, at that moment when struggles and fights started appearing, the emperors started thinking, and all the three waves had the same system. First, emperors wanted no images, then they discovered how bad fights there were, and then emperors changed their opinion 180 degrees and said, no, no, let's have images and peace in the empire. So it's not only a theological concept, it's also very much a political struggle. That was funny for me. Maybe you don't find it, but it's so much like our time. That's what I want to say. All right, and just a moment, I have to turn this page. The result of iconoclasm on the East was this. If you do not honor the icons, it means you do not believe in Christ. Plus, the images got controlled by church authorities. So since there's so much fight, let's start controlling them. Let's start seeing what are they and how they should be made. And the images stopped being the object of private devotion, and they became part of the liturgical environment. Together with architecture, poetry, and singing, icons became one of official instruments church started using to embody the Byzantine ideal, restoring unity between divine and human, bringing heaven to earth. We can say even more than that. There are certain theologians who consider a human in front of an icon passive, while the icon is considered acting, influencing, working with this human being. There are many other very special concepts. We can read about them. They're much more studied and covered in books. And I want to move again to the West, because this time, like 7th century, 8th century, in the East, iconoclasm, in the West, nothing. It was time of Gregory II, and in 727, beginning of 8th century, he saw these problems on the East. He said, well, guys, we also have to do something here on the West. He called his bishops to a local council, and the council confirmed use of images based on Bible. He wrote a letter to the emperor, and this letter was read aloud after 60 years. Anyway, they confirmed it's okay to use icons. His follower, Gregory III, loved images a lot. He ruled that those who insult icons should be expelled from the church. And overall, there were no serious iconoclast discussions in the West. Pope of Rome of the time, who lived during the 7th Ecumenical Council and who was invited to the council, was Adrian I. He expressed the same position as Basil the Great many centuries earlier than he. Icons are good for education and inspiration for decent life. The decree of the 7th Council, and the 7th Council is 787, so the very end of 8th century, were signed by all the representatives of all churches. Everybody from Jerusalem, Carthagena, everywhere signed the same paper. Everybody agreed, no problems. But when Pope Adrian got these acts, these papers, maybe on something else, in Greek language, he brought them back to Rome and commissioned a translation into Latin. And at that moment, something happened, because those guys who translated them were not very good in translating. And they made some very rough and imprecise translations. Some Greek terms like proskinesis, which in English is suggested as act of solemn expression of respect, was translated as adoratio, which is admiration. As a result, the Western Church did also have a little iconoclast rebellion because the people didn't like the new terms they were suggested and new approach to images which was not usual for them. But yet this rebellion was short and local. Worse happened when he emailed this translation to Charlemagne, because Karl the Great, or Charlemagne, was outraged when he started reading these papers. And he asked his own theologians to produce a more decent text which could normally describe what are the images and how to use them. So the theologians worked with him, produced what now is known as Charlemagne's books, or Libri Carolini, and these Carolingian theologians followed some golden middle way. They stated that icons are not idols, which is good. Therefore, they should not be destroyed. Okay. But it is useless to burn candles and incense. One can have icons or not, but it's not recommended to put them near the roads. We can adore God, but adoring icons is unjust. If we adore icons, it is superstitious and excessive. The icons are accepted in churches only to remind about great deeds and decorate walls. Carolingian theologians neglected the idea of icons gaining any sacredness from their prototypes, because the very substances they were made of, like board and colors, were not sacred. So these theologians had written an a list of hierarchy of values. First, holy gifts. Second, cross, but not as an object, as an emblem of Christ. Third, scriptures. Fourth, sacred vessels. Fifth, relics of saints. No images. Images were not mentioned. They are just objects, like anything else. And as now we see this from a distance, we see that these guys were not surprised by the bad translation. They even didn't try to retranslate it, even though many of them would know Greek. They simply accepted the difference. Okay, you in the East, you do things the way you used to do. We in the West, we do the way we used to do. That's how it functioned. That's what we see now. I'm not sure how really, but that's what it looks like. They were scandalized, but didn't try to redo the work in a better way. So Charlemagne called his own council in Frankfurt in 794 and had confirmed the Charlemagne's books. Another council, 825, in 30 years. They condemned the acts of Seventh Council. So they decided the guys who gathered for Seventh Ecumenical Council were not good enough. So after this Second Council, the highest point of iconoclasm on the West was that moment when two bishops decided they don't want either Holy Cross or relics in their churches. They are against any kind of honoring of these two things even. But that was too much even for Byzantine Empire, because even in Byzantine Empire, people respected the image of cross and the relics. And after some very short period of time, these two bishops were humiliated and were silenced. So that was too much even for the West and for the East as well. A short conclusion: even though we know that Western Church has accepted icons, they were accepted as stated in Frankfurt. I can give you these quotations. Images are needed for illiterate to learn about the faith, to decorate buildings, and to remind about historical events. Let's speak about practice of use of images in the West, because icons started to spread in the West starting from the 11th century. Crucifixes, images of the Mother of God, and different images of saints. But again, we remember they were tightly connected with the relics. They completed each other and got popular in their connection. First of all, images function as a figurative possibility to visualize the source of relics, like images of sculptures of saints whose relics were honored here or there. Image was not evaluated as a work of art. It was a possibility to have a hologram of what a relic only showed in a dried up bone. Very often images and sculptures on the West were used to contain relics, so they received their veneration as relic holders, inheriting their importance from relics. And sculpture, again, works as a reminder of how the saint looked when he was alive. We can probably mention that in this case, relics were considered miraculous, and together with the images, they were rather objects of personal prayer. They were not part of liturgical rite, and this is important because it motivated people for personal devotion, and we can underline more personal relationship with the beholder, more and more tendency for imaginary dialogue with the saint represented or with the Mother of God. So we're speaking about the time when people not only pray to God, but pray looking at an image, and it's a very strong dialogue. It's a personal connection. And we can speak about contemplative visions and mystic experiences, namely because of this prevailing individual devotion. In 13th or 14th centuries, there are lots of testimonies of this mystic ecstasy experienced with help of images. Images start getting more and more important in routine religious life, and Catholic Church discovered necessity to give it certain regulation. And in this period, I should mention that extremely important role was the role of Pseudo-Dionysius Areopagita, explaining principle of anagogical ascent of human souls as a way allowing us to climb from terrestrial and lower reality to a higher world. His teaching was promoted by Abbot Suger in Cluny, who created a huge empire. And a very important role in this empire had art as a possibility to influence the beholder. And yet we should not forget about the discussion from Bernard Clairvaux, third Titian of Cistercian order, with Suger, because Bernard criticized Suger for excessive church decoration. So it's okay to use the images or beauty to glorify God, but we should not distract people by that. It's a long thing. It's a very interesting story. There are so many wonderful chapters about that. What I'm coming to now, I guess, at least what seems to me now, maybe later I'll read some more books and discover something else, but for what I understand now, it's the 13th century which produced our, I shouldn't say our, well, the current doctrine of Catholic Church regarding art. So the specific ruling which prescribes the role of art in Catholic Church. And that was a special gentleman who lived in the 13th century. He also wrote a lot of different statements and specific theological researches. I think you may mention who he was. You may guess who was this gentleman. 13th century, theologian, important, Latin, Catholic, lots of works. Investigating different spheres of human life, including beauty. It's a hint. Okay, he was speaking about little spark of divine wherever you see beauty. Okay, it probably should be me to say it. It is Thomas Aquinas. That was him who produced theology of beauty. He wrote a lot about religious philosophy and metaphysics of beauty. So that, I guess, is something important we should mention. And together with more and more general tendency for personal devotion, images start getting more and more individualistic. And they reflect more and more illustrative role of an image rather than theological one, because we are speaking about beauty. We are speaking about the role of beauty as a possibility to inspire humans through sparkle of divine. And now, as I read this, I remember a lot those who now in our times start speaking about uglification of our world and who want our life, our churches, and everything to be beautiful. And we have a lot of this in Russia as well. I thought it's just in Russia, but no, I see it in many other places. And I just guess that these people simply follow Thomas Aquinas, who said that any kind of beauty we should see sparkle of divine. That means if in the houses around you you don't see sparkle of divine, they're not, no, okay. If the houses around you are not beautiful, there is no sparkle of divine. Amen. Well, again, let's move forward. This gentleman, yes, he was really great. And as stated before, religious art is now diffused more and more because this example of having mystic experiences and individual prayer was influencing, and more even private people wanted images to be in their houses. And yet we can speak about growing interest of the church towards art. At the same time, we should always think of what kind of art is it commissioned, because thinking of the role of an image in a church, it's a great visual point. It's an important piece of, no, not a piece. It's an important part of the church interior, attracting all your attention, even though there is no particular prescribed role of this image in the liturgy. We can speak about the possibility to pray with them, personal devotion, but nothing regarding the rite, nothing which would involve any society into communal prayer. So we can say that even a private person could have a similar image at home, and it would not really be much different except for size and complexity. So a church could afford a huge piece and pay lots of money. A private person could have afforded a little one, but yet the role was the same. It's a tool for individual devotion. And that was a possibility to pray with a beautiful image, but never thinking about any connection with the environment, with the church, with the theological concepts of divinification of a place where you are now. Well, of course, we can speak about the time of Protestantism because they didn't like the lavishness of decoration. So Catholic Trident Council in 1563 has stated that we use images because our devotion toward the images comes toward their prototypes, asking for salvation. But we're not speaking about any role of sacredness of the image itself. And yet the images were supposed to be firstly teaching. They were giving this didactic meaning, and therefore artists could be much freer on the West, and they could have produced Madonnas like this or even more alive because they were appealing to personal psychological feeling, personal perception of religious life. And in the East, yet, icons are part of very rigid rites and system of relationship between humans and the church as a mechanism bringing you to God, as church as the body doing some ministry towards you. So that's how we can say it. The East has this approach, the West has its approach, and it's conditioned by the history. It's conditioned by the process of growing separately and different practices. Of course, I should probably read the Letter to Artists by Pope John the 23rd, and many other more current things. But what I see in Western churches give me a hint that probably yet most of these artists and their clients belong to the audience of Thomas Aquinas. They speak about beauty and sparkle of divine in any beautiful thing. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm sure you'll have lots of things to say against or lots of things to add, because I try to be as essential as possible. And I rather ask questions than give answers to them. So thank you for listening and thank you for your patience. I really appreciate. Thank you.
I was wondering, the circle or the circular form or the oval, how that started as the shape for either identification or relics or framing something. I wondered, did that shape come about because a lot of the seals that were used prior to that were circular? So
I don't know.
people were used to
Interesting.
using a round, and
Yes.
that communicated identification. And so now we're making an object that can contain something, and it's round also.
It's a coin, form of a coin as well.
Right.
So no, again, it very often is legal. So it's a practice of routine, empire, documentary, many things which were just routine for the time and their daily life, I guess.
Okay.
I have a question, Philip. I'm actually surprised you never mentioned Islam, because the big difference also between the south and the north in Europe is that Islam in 622, after the flight of Muhammad the Hijjat, was conquering Jerusalem, all of North Africa, and Greece was now actually in Byzantium threatened by Islam, who did not accept images. The north didn't see the threat and didn't really care at all, because they had the kingdom of Poland in between as a buffer, Lithuania, Latvia, and so on today, okay? The second thing I was actually wondering also is in the 13th century, you mentioned that also politically, Russia was cut off by the Mongols from Byzantium. Therefore, they had to develop their own style. And the third remark is that with Van Eyck and the Renaissance, don't forget, the East was using, and tempera, he was using oil, which means mixing on canvas, and be able to have better transitions than with egg tempera.
If you seek for some means, you find them.
Well,
Because
the
we
Mongols is not to seek for some meals. Islam is not to seek for some meals, and oil painting is not seek for some meals. I mean, I'm just trying to say that these are facts.
Yeah, but we can distinguish between political reasons and reasons which guided artists. If you want to render the face more realistically, you'll find a way to do it. And the oil was added to paint since very ancient times, Plinius the Great.
Yeah, sure.
So, and there are lots of Russian iconographers starting from 17th century who start adding oil as well. So no, it's a question of what you prefer, what you lean towards.
Well, there was also a scariness after the iconoclast. Also, Theodora made this big thing, whatever, but they were even scared to make it more likely. They were actually on purpose
Yes,
defiguring,
absolutely.
because if you were making it too likely, you would be condemned. So
yes, and that's what
reason.
I say. Church started controlling and decided not to make it so tempting anymore. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the Pope and the Patriarch of Byzantium were not friends. So if they could do anything against each other, they would do that. Okay?
Politics, and politics.
Yes, of course. But I think it's also important to know that it existed, that there was actually a cultural difference between the northern part of Europe and the eastern southern part of Europe. and it's because of their philosophy and power. Frankish, he's talking about Charlemagne. Where does it start? At 800, the Pope made Charlemagne emperor. The guy at the time, the empress was not very happy because she, in 453, from the Vandali, had the imperial seal, and the seal was not in Rome anymore. So she was actually telling the Pope, this Charlemagne is not an emperor. So in 800, they already had this political
Yes, yes.
thing. So
So
politics play a big role.
I
I
should
think.
have extended my lecture about 12
no,
times.
no. I'm saying that, you know, we also have to look at politically why certain things are done in art, because it's something dictated by. I mean, it's not like you had a choice. I mean, if you were going to be cut your head off, you're going to paint a certain way, okay?
Many things to consider. But again, what we have today is not an occasional thing. It's a result of certain consequences.
So today, if you look at modern history, like, you know, you look at the last, whatever, what is your opinion on the art? Is there a Western and Eastern, talk about orthodoxy, a Western and Eastern trend?
Yes, at least what I see, because my dad taught iconography courses in Italy for 15 years. He has lots of students who use his type of highlights and shadow. So, like, it's such a, I don't know, Facebook uses him often, even Polverari or many other Italians, and they render the images much more realistically, even using the tools given by Father Andrei, because that's how they understand images. They understand them more real, more historical, more illustrative than someone who was born or who is trying to use the Eastern approach. And it's change of your brain rather than your visual understanding. So if your brain feels you should represent it more real, one thing. If your brain is seeking for more transcendent type of a picture, so not calling your intermediate recognition, but rather sending your thoughts above or beyond the model, beyond the image, that's a different approach. And I was asked at the first Zoom session, like, what was this influence of Iconoclast movement, yes, to the iconography. And I had to find these icons. I think they really show. So you're not simply showing the features of Christ, but you're trying to render an image in such a way that it rather hides features of Christ. Yes, we are not revealing the hairs and wrinkles. We are, on the basis of human appearance, we create a transformed vision, a vision which is rather hiding the appearance than revealing it. So that, I would say, is more about the Eastern approach, which only uses the appearance as a reason, as a possibility to do something beyond the human appearance. But again, there are options and possibilities and theologies which are all very different, even though there are crossing points. Sorry I made it so long, but well, I tried to squeeze as much as possible. Thank you for your patience, for not snoring. Thank you.
2,000 years of history is kind of hard to condense.
That's right.
1 hour. Yeah.
But you did a good job.
Thank you. Well, no, it was a discovery for myself, because it was a long time I was wishing to learn why Western images are so Western, and I understood they're just Western. So no secret. It's just so. And Libri Carolini, it also was an interesting thing.
I think the Franks, you know, and I think Ina posted some stuff on Iconographer there as well about Charlemagne there. I mean, Charlemagne was a military smart guy at the time, you know, but he did. You had to convert. I mean, you had no choice. You have to become a Christian with Charlemagne. I mean, if you read his books, I was there in Cologne, you know. If you did not convert, I mean, you had a choice. Either I beat you up or you convert, okay? And also to come up is that there was a lot of kind of, okay, I'll convert just to make sure I'm okay. But the circle, if you think about it, Philip, the Ouroboros, you know Ouroboros, the two snakes eating each other, okay? Which is also a symbol of life, okay? Eternal life, you know. And the tree of life and the sun, don't forget the sun, the rising of the sun was also venerated a lot in pagan as the god or whatever it is. So a lot of paganism. Look at all the symbols in your Christianity, the invented symbols, but they have a lot of pagan ones. And I think even today, like the peacock, I'm trying to understand, okay, the peacock, eternal life, the flesh doesn't rot. Why is that a symbol for Christianity? I'm kind of
No, because there is another thing. By many ancient authors, it was believed that peacock, in case of hunger, is taking his own meat to feed his own children.
Was that the pelican?
Oh gosh, maybe I'm wrong. Yes, maybe then it's because of meat. Maybe just because of meat, which
The
doesn't
meat
get
doesn't
rotten.
rot. Yeah.
Yes. So we're speaking about Christ who died but wasn't.
Yeah,
This...
because the pelican is a symbol of Christ giving his own.
Yes. No, I'm sorry. That's why I don't like symbols. You have to remember. You don't. It's not enough to see. You have to remember things.
That's right. That's right. But also the symbols were used as a secret code because they were persecuted by the Romans, and therefore they were inventing symbols to say, "Hey, I'm Christian." It's a bit like, you know, there's societies with secret whatevers that will, so that they don't get caught. Like the fish, you know, was kind of one of those.
Yes, indeed.
But it's a very fascinating world. Yeah.
Allah, yes.
You know, this lecture made by you give me some ideas to think about. Again, that we cannot actually copy the images from past times. Not exactly, not copy them exactly, if we have a thought that all these images were done this way because of some philosophical ideas or something happened in their world. That's why these images look like that. This is not only about the school and technique. This is about ideas. So, and see the difference was because of discussions and of some philosophical ideas, and some ideas were accepted. That's why all these images look like that. Since they were discussed, they were accepted like interesting, and then images started to be different.
Yes.
So the same, if we do some icons and we try to copy them like Andrei Rublev did, they do not look natural and alive in our modern life. So it is difficult. But this is the way to think about modern icons. first of all, look for something that belong to all this period, to all these icons, something that we recognize, oh, this is the icon. But
Yeah,
also
find common field. Yes, find common bases in images of 16th century, 10th century, what they
and this is
all
not about
about.
school. This
No,
is
no,
not
no. What
about
they are all
technique.
about.
This
Yes,
is,
what
yeah,
they talk about.
yeah.
What is your view on mass production of icons? Because this is something that, you know, if you propagate an image, like 5 of them, but now if you propagate 100,000 of that same image, how do you feel about that?
For me, it's problem of recycling, because I used to be Orthodox, and for me, images are sacred. So when the colors fade, what do I do with it? It stops looking the way it was planned. That's for me the problem. So I should find some fire to just transform it into trashes, which can be thrown away or on river, because again, it that's how I feel this problem. The colors which fade. So they were not meant to be this way, which they look now after 20 years of picture being exposed to sun. And well, I think very often, you know, why should they be many? That's the question. Why should one have hundreds or, okay, dozens of images in the room?
Because
One,
I want one.
okay, all right. No, because I know there are lots of people whom I respect, who are my friends, who have, I don't know, 2 dozens of different little icons or small icons there in their room of prayer, and somehow it's their habit. But I don't know. Maybe it's professional thing. Like we used to say in Russia, the one who produces shoes doesn't have normal shoes. So
Well, I have some insights about what you have said today. It just makes me think about, I mean, I can understand better the problems that we have in the Western church, um, you know, and how being someone that makes religious art or iconography, it's just a very difficult situation to be in the Western world because of all that, the way that we interpret images in the West. And we had talked about this before. You have mentioned it a little bit, and I kind of challenge that notion of just being one way or another, because I feel like there's so much that happens in the human being that is part of the common experience of human beings everywhere. And so that I feel that the simple people has a way of connecting with images that is not only seeking rational understanding, as the Western world had put it on paper. So I challenge that part, but I can understand that this has been the way that the authority of the church has seen things in one way, so that carries out. And when in our times it's more difficult, even because of the current times, how things, and I mean everything is like globalized, and so it makes me understand more our present times. And at the same time, I feel like from the beginning you were talking about the West and the East, and there are very clear differences, and like Bob was saying, clear also cultural differences, everything. But it wasn't until later that we were actually separated as, you know, as the Western Church and the Eastern Church. So I feel like in the Western Church, we still have a very deep connection with all the Eastern world. And as the time goes by and history, you know, evolves, we've kind of discovered that and kind of like touch up with that. You know, even, you know, Saint Thomas Aquinas was one of them, the people that kind of like retouch with all the, you know, the Desert Fathers and all the you know, the great saints of the past, and kind of like revived a little bit of that in the church, in the Western Church. So so what I'm trying to say is that there is a big difference, and then there is a big gap, but it's also like a big connection, and that I feel like we haven't kind of looked at that. You know, it's like we've concentrated on this, trying to understand the different way that we view things, but yeah, that's I'm trying to think how do I feel, or what do I think, that where do I fit here in this where do I fit in this? I've always been sort of like a hipster in every way, for every way in my life, you know, not fitting anywhere. But I feel like in my personal experience is I feel I have like much more like a Eastern spirituality, because my connection with images has always been of awe. It's like the experience of awe, and not the experience only of like trying to find beauty, or how do you say, like it's just a deeper connection that I feel that it would, if you would try to catalogize it, it would be more like Eastern than Western. So it's just interesting.
5 points Eastern, 2 points Western. 70%.
Philip,
Yeah.
do you know the Last Supper picture of Da Vinci? Right? Do you know how modern painters would do that today?
Oh. Many
Have
ways.
you seen it?
There
Have
are
you seen
many
it?
ways, yes.
I don't want to know.
You want to know? Can I just share my screen for 1 second to show you?
Yeah,
I'm
please.
afraid you spoil it, but okay.
No.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that. Yes.
I love it. I mean, it's actually, you know, that's, you know, but it says you again, you know, how to come back to our conversation, of course, is to say how our lives changes the way we think all the time. And,
Yes.
you know, what is religion going to mean, you know, in this pandemic, after the pandemic?
And post-pandemic, yes.
Yes. So, I mean, the history is good. I mean, we can argue about what and how, but the only people that will know with us today in 200 years when they will talk about the year 220, I mean, they're going to assume to read some stuff, to look at some video footages. But it's interesting. But thank you so much. I mean, these are great conversations. I really love these things. Sorry for sometimes being aggressive, but it's my nature.
Perfect. It's perfect, Bob. Thank you. Thank you for.
But I don't bite, okay? So don't worry about it.
We don't worry.
We don't think that you bite. So.
No, thank you. No, it's great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I think one thing
everybody.
that picture showed, Bob, we're also shaped by technology. And
We are.
And it's not just the tools that we have, it's this ability to connect around the world, literally in a moment. And we have cultural exchange, we have idea exchange like we've never had before, literally, because people have not been able to communicate as quickly. So this is a different time than we've had. Some similarities, but some differences. I mean, 100 years ago, if you'd shown that picture of the Last Supper, would anybody have understood what it meant?
No.
Now, you didn't have to explain it. We all got it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, even if you had showed it last year,
Well,
Yes.
no, even it's amazing. In a couple of months, how
Yeah.
things have changed. I mean, and of course, technology. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Technology is a wonderful thing. I mean, look at even us today. I mean, Philippe is in St. Petersburg. You somewhere in the U.S. Natalia is in, I think, Ukraine. Ala is in Calgary. I'm in Edmonton. And we all can talk live. I mean, it's a concept that, I mean, imagine if these great guys, I always say, let's say like Da Vinci or Rublev had technology today. I mean, could they produce better
Unbelievable.
work?
The
I
world
think-
would be, the
wouldn't
world
have to
would be
broadcast.
different. Yes.
No, it is fascinating to think about in those aspects, and especially at a time when we have an opportunity to come together and to share so much. It's also causing just that dark side of it, and like, I'm right, you're not, and I can't take not being right, so you have to agree with me. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, virtual fights are less harmful. You still have to do that.
But you know what? Cyberbullying, on the other hand, that's a real thing. So it's how people are taking each other, like always. Oh, I don't want to worship the seal of the emperor, so I don't want to worship the seal of Christ. Really? It's fascinating.
But when you know more, you forgive more.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yes.
Well, I'm starting to realize, and I've been reading a lot and whatever else, is that I need about 10 lifetimes to
I support this
understand.
Indian idea. Yes, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I should become Indian and reincarnate to continue my studies or something. Yes, right. I mean,
Could be.
I support the Indian idea too, to be
Just to
honest with you.
remember, where did you leave all the books to start from the next folder?
Don't read the same books.
Yes,
That's
yes.
right.
Otherwise, it's just stupid.
Oh, that's the deja vu thing. Like, I remember that. I don't know where, but I remember that.
That was from the life number 3. Okay.
It's good. Anyway, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you
Much
for joining
appreciated.
us. Thank
And
you.
by the way, I'm in Calgary next week. I'll let you know.
Okay, we may see you from Calgary then.
No, I just during the week.
Okay. All right. So I'll see you next Saturday then. Yes. No other special discussions. Okay. Good.
Just
Oh,
thank you.
maybe
Yes.
one
Thank you
thing.
for
You have to
that.
say thank you to Olga, because I mean, the correction work, I mean, she's extremely detailed. And it helps a lot because, you can see that she really spent a lot of time to analyze
Oh,
everything.
she
and
does. She spends
and she
entire
does. So-
days. Yes. Just.
So you get all the profit of the well done, Philippe, but the background there, okay? So
Well, first I record all the lectures so she can view that if she likes. But after all, I'm passing all the praises to her.
no, I think it's a lot of work. So what do you do?
Oh, nothing. Twice a week, I just switch on computer and sit in front of you and say, hi, guys. That's all my job. Oh, the rest of the time I bring your coffee.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, I'm
So
trying to
say
be good.
thank you for Olga from all of us
Yes.
for the support and all her hard work.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula. Thank you very much.
And slavery is illegal in Russia.
No slavery. She does it by herself for her own decisions.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Okay, merci. Thank you for the wonderful conversation.